Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask Jeff and Lauren, where we answer your questions about playing the double bass. Now, Lauren and myself both teach lessons and courses over at discoverdoublebass.com, so if you'd like to learn more about this instrument, please go there and check out all of the videos and resources that we have for you. But let's get straight into today's question. It's from Sasha. So she's asking, Lauren, I'm looking to buy my first bass somewhere in the future, and I was wondering what qualities to look for when shopping. I'll play more solo music, and I'm wondering if a different body shape or string size will help me play higher up and more comfortably in thumb position. Does shoulder width contribute to being able to get around better in the higher positions? So what do you think, Lauren? Let's pick
that's a
that
great
apart.
question.
You know, what are your
It's a
first
really good
thoughts?
question. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think if you're going to be playing in the upper registers as opposed to, in orchestral playing, I think we are rarely asked to get up into thumb position, above the octave harmonic. And so it's still a little bit unwieldy to play, a massive Prescott or something if you're a smaller person, but it's not as unmanageable as when you're playing solo music, which often has us playing way in the higher registers. So there's two different aspects that you can sort of play with, the size, the overall size of the instrument, and also the slope of the shoulders. So if you can see my instrument back here, it's got the classic violin shape, violin corner shape. It's got the little violin corners, and then also at the top, it's got the rounded shoulders. And usually that is a little bit more unwieldy in the upper registers, but my bass is really small. It's actually the size of a half size, but that's why the slope of the shoulders isn't too big of an issue. It never gets in my way. And then the other aspect is the slope of the shoulder. So your bass is not gamba shoulders, like completely, really. It's just sort of slightly
My bass
forward. I'm just trying to.
yeah, it's got gamba.
It looks
Yeah,
more like it
cutaways,
has
but
the slope looks a lot more prominent from the front,
yeah.
um, from your videos. But anyway, so you can find a lot of different examples, where you can see the difference. It's really obvious. The gamba shoulders are more sloped. And in that way, that makes it a lot easier to get around, because that's just the trick, is like just getting around this massive instrument. And so when I was shopping for instruments, my bass that I had, my first instrument, was a gamba shoulder instrument. And I still have it actually. But it just was a little bit too big. I wanted something that sounded a little bit different, and then also was a little bit more manageable. And so, I could make do with it, but I don't know. It's kind of personal, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. It really just takes you trying a bunch of different instruments, playing the hardest thing, playing like your bread and butter kind of stuff, just playing everything you can think of. And sometimes, like with this instrument, I never thought that, the non-sloped shoulders would be something that I would be able to get around or want for solo playing, and then it worked. So my advice would just be to try everything, and don't be closed-minded. A lot of people are really averse to the idea of using a smaller instrument, but my bass projects incredibly well, upper and lower register. And so you might be surprised. Just try everything you possibly can think of.
I think that is absolutely the right thing, because the one kind of constant is that they're all different, and the
Yeah,
setup,
absolutely.
and sometimes you'll just play an instrument that's completely, the opposite of what you would have thought, and it's absolutely great. I'm always really interested in like shorter string lengths. I mean, my bass is pretty standard actually. It's 41.5 inches,
Right.
but I played a bass recently that it was something like 43 or something. It was really big, but it was so comfortable, so well set up, and I thought, well, actually, I wouldn't mind at all playing this bass. It's fantastic. And
Right. Right.
but yeah, generally I prefer kind of standard or slightly shorter, because you've got a shorter string length, haven't you, Lauren, on your bass? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you know what
My
it
bass
is?
is, yeah, my string length is 38 and a half.
Oh, I'd love to play your
So
bass. I'd love to
it's
have a try.
great. It's so good. And I
Yeah,
mean, everything is just right there. Like
yeah.
it's great. But the other thing to think about too is that if you're a smaller person, you should just think about getting a bass that's relative to your size, or don't,
Yes.
whatever you want. Like you can do whatever you want, whatever feels most comfortable. I've known people that are smaller that have played enormous instruments and they somehow make it work. And then, there are some players like Max Demoff is the teacher at Cleveland, and he's not a small person. He plays a really small bass. Um, and it just kind of depends on the person. But for a smaller person like me, it was just sort of like, well, I'm just trying to get a bass that's relative to my size. And the number one comment I get from people that meet me in person after seeing me online is, "Oh, you're a lot smaller than I thought." And that's, I think, because I'm just sitting next to my bass and it looks normal. So that's another thing to consider.
People say the opposite to me because they say that they think that I look really small on camera because of the perspective of the bass being so
Right.
large, and
I
I don't
did
know.
actually think that you were a hobbit, but I didn't.
Yeah, I know. It was funny when we met actually because yeah, we
It
actually
was.
like
Do you
completely.
remember what you said to me actually when we met in
I have
person?
a horrible feeling it might have been that I don't know. In fact, you tell me, and then you can embarrass me,
I
Lauren. What
see
was it?
I see you across. We were meeting at a bar in
Yeah,
Houston, and
yeah,
I see you like across the bar, and
yeah,
we're like super excited to see each
yeah,
other,
yeah.
and you start like yelling like, "You're real. You're a real person."
Yeah, I get a bit excited in bars. You should never.
No,
You
it's
should.
great.
Yeah, that was a cool time. Um, I completely lost track of what I'm trying to say now, Lauren.
So
Yeah.
anyway, with
Oh,
bass,
basis.
yeah.
I have another couple of things really quickly. I like in terms of the slope of the shoulders. I agree that it doesn't always follow that the cutaway ones are more
Mm,
easy to play. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But the thing that I find is useful is the overstand, the distance from the
that's a
fingerboard
huge
away
one.
from the body. And if a lot of
Mm-hmm,
older basses, particularly like German trade basses, 100-year
mm-hmm,
old instruments, that kind of thing, they tend to be quite flat on the on
mm-hmm.
so which makes it uncomfortable to get your arm around, and you'll end up
Yeah,
getting your forearm catching on the side of it. So I like
that's
to
a
be able
great
to
point.
just practice, just hold onto the string and just play a long note all the way up and down,
Mm-hmm,
and see if
mm-hmm,
you kind of your arm keeps catching. With mine, the overstand's quite comfortable. I think it's like
mm-hmm,
yours, Lauren. It isn't particularly cut away, but it's actually well set up, and the angles are all quite nice.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Definitely string length I consider, but in practice I haven't found it as much of an issue as I thought. And I think this whole thing about size is so fascinating because it doesn't seem to follow the sort of the set rules. But if you want to play a small instrument, go for it. You can
Yeah,
get big sounds out of smaller double basses, and it's definitely not the
absolutely.
case
And
that the
some
big
of
ones are louder at all.
No, absolutely. And I was just going to say that some of the big ones, you think, when you play it, you're just going to hear this like the floor
Canon.
shake. And sometimes, you can't get it, they're actually kind of quiet, which is
Yeah.
really weird, but I don't know enough about,
I think the thickness of the
that.
wood, sometimes you get really heavily built larger instruments. I'm
Hmm.
thinking of a few five strings that I've played, and they are so heavy in the construction that they don't resonate well enough. That's
Yeah.
been my experience with some instruments. So, definitely some of the loudest basses are larger
Hmm.
instruments, sure, but not all of them. That's the key thing. And it's
Absolutely.
I'm really into kind of smaller instruments. So let us know what you're
Yeah.
playing. But below, join in the comments and tell us what's worked for you, whether you play solo playing or not, and particularly what
Hmm.
your experience of playing in thumb position is like. That would be really interesting to hear more about it. So so I hope you've enjoyed that, everybody. If you have a question, leave it below. We'll see you in the comments, and catch you next time.